Hello, I am Mark, welcoming you to another segment of Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery. Today being April 1, 2020, April Fool's Day, it seems appropriate to display a little drollery. So I have for you a silly comedy entitled The Barbie and Ken Game. Viewers of this video are surely familiar with the Barbie and Ken dolls, which have enjoyed commercial success for several decades. Wholly ignorant of the characters they represent, I have fabricated a tale that may depart substantially from the official version, but it's all for fun. If you are confused by the twisting plot and numerous characters, focus on the principal people of the story. They are two couples, Phoebe and Mel Pierce, and Barbie and Ken Briscoe. Okay, here is the Barbie and Ken game. Ladies, may I have your attention, please? The women clustered in twos and threes about the living room stopped talking and turned toward the speaker. She was tall, slim, dark-haired, and well-dressed. It's 3:18. I suspect that nearly everyone who planned to attend has arrived by now. Therefore, please be seated and we'll begin. The guests found places in a semicircle of chairs around the fireplace, in front of which stood their hostess. I'm so happy to see you this afternoon. Those of you who are new to these sessions may not know me, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Phoebe Pierce. Although I've lived here in Richmond all my life, this is my first opportunity to host the Carla Cosmetica party. I hope you will bear with me if I make mistakes. A few women chuckled. Today I brought along Lila Lee Osgood, an expert cosmetologist. Please stand for a moment, Lila Lee, so the others can see you. The expert stood and waved to the group. Then Phoebe said, "This afternoon, Lila Lee will give us some tips on the application of cosmetics. We'll also play some games and enjoy refreshments. At the end of the party, we will all receive a ticket for a drawing to take place on November 5th. Someone in the county will win a major Carla Cosmetica makeover. Perhaps it will be you. Wouldn't that be exciting?" To kick off the party, Phoebe had the group play a game, the purpose of which was to introduce the guests to one another. Possessing an excellent memory, Phoebe's chubby and affable neighbor, Heidi Bigelow, emerged as the winner. The contest left the participants in high spirits. Phoebe called for the group's attention once more. Now we're going to enjoy a game that's always quite popular. It's called the Barbie and Ken Game. Lila Lee is distributing to each of you a piece of paper and an envelope. The envelope that you receive is marked either Ken or Barbie. Now here is how the game is played. Ken and Barbie have a nosy neighbor named Jessica. Having heard some scandalous secrets about the couple, Jessica is sending anonymous notes to all of her neighbors revealing the pair's alleged transgressions. Playing the part of the nosy neighbor, each of you will compose the notes in a special manner. After reading the name on your envelope, write the first word of the message on the paper. Then put the paper into the envelope and hand it to the person on your left. When given an envelope, add the next word of the message before passing it on. Always pass your envelope before opening the one from the person on your right. When everyone has contributed to every letter, we will read the ridiculous notes out loud. Remember that this is just for fun. Use your imagination and don't spare anyone's feelings. One of the players listening to the rules was Peggy Yarborough, a 1975 graduate of the University of Virginia. Immediately after graduation, she had married her college boyfriend, Giles. Since then, for the past 6 years, the two of them had resided in this upscale community of young couples. Inwardly averse to commercial parties, Peggy had attended this event simply to maintain goodwill with her neighbors. The envelope given to her read Barbie. Pausing just briefly, she wrote Ken on the paper. Upon receiving a letter that began Barbie, she added the word hides. After a few rounds of note passing, Peggy could see that some hyperbolic imaginations were at work. The finished products went to ridiculous lengths. One made Barbie a participant in mud wrestling matches. Another had Ken as a transvestite. The letter in Peggy's hands during the final game suggested infidelity. It said, "Why is your wife spending so much time with the Avondale golf pro?" After reading it out loud and eliciting the usual shrieks and laughter, Peggy placed the note back in the envelope and set the envelope on the coffee table. At the conclusion of the party, Vietnamese immigrant Tiana Huy engaged Peggy in a conversation about male-female relationships in America. She wondered why there was so much conflict. Peggy replied, "Oh, I think most of the stories you hear about marital problems are exaggerated. I know of only one couple in our neighborhood experiencing difficulties of that sort." Curious, Tiana asked in a lowered voice, "Who they?" Peggy whispered, "The Briscoes, who live a couple of doors down." Puzzled, Tiana asked, How you spell that name? My English still not good." Peggy said, B-R-I. Changing her mind, she said, "I'll show you." On the envelope that she had used in the final game, Peggy wrote the word Briscoe to the right of the Ken that was already there. Leaving the Pierce residence, Peggy Yarborough absent-mindedly retained the envelope in her hand. At the curb, she discovered its presence. Looking about, she saw no trash container in sight. Reluctant to return to the house just to dispose of the envelope, she stuck it in the mailbox, thinking that Phoebe could discard it for her later. Unknown to her, Phoebe was scurrying about at that moment, trying to clean up the mess from the party. With a doctor's appointment looming in 10 minutes, the hostess barely managed to put the dirty dishes in the kitchen and to throw the used papers into the wastebasket. Her BMW departed only minutes before the arrival of her husband's Mercedes. Mel Pierce, a tall, lanky real estate broker, was a methodical man whose life followed a rather rigid pattern. Part of that routine involved checking the mailbox immediately after parking the car in the garage. On this day, he was surprised to find an envelope bearing the name Ken Briscoe. Assuming that someone had made a mistake, Mel placed the letter in the Briscoe mailbox. Half an hour later, the man whose name was on the envelope arrived in his Jaguar. He too checked the mailbox. Inside were 2 ads and a curious unstamped and unsealed letter. Ken studied the handwriting on the envelope. He assumed that the letter had been placed in his box by a neighbor. Standing on the sidewalk, he read a peculiar question. "Why is your wife spending time with the Avondale golf pro?" 2 male skateboarders were in the street nearby. Ken asked them, "How long you boys been out here?" One of them, Danny Bigelow, responded, "Oh, about an hour." Then Ken asked, "Did you see anyone else, other than the postman, put something in my mailbox?" "Yeah," Danny replied. "Maybe half an hour ago I saw Mr. Pierce put something in it. Questions flooded Ken's mind. Why would Mel Pierce, whom he scarcely knew, send such a message anonymously? Was it true that Barbie was seeing a lot of the golf pro? Most important of all, why was Mel suggesting some hanky-panky? At dinner, Ken tackled the problem circuitously. What do you know about the Pierces? He casually asked his wife. Not much, Barbie replied. We rarely cross paths. You've seen them at the Avondale, haven't you? They're members too. Yes, Ken agreed. Uncertain what to say next, he dropped the subject. During much of the night and the following day, Ken thought about the mysterious letter. Arriving home late that afternoon, he noticed Phoebe Pierce working in her front yard. Eager to gain more information, he casually strolled down the street and stopped in front of her house. Oh, your marigolds look lovely, Ken said. You must have a green thumb. Thanks. Actually, I've neglected them a bit. My job leaves me a little free time for gardening. What sort of work do you do? I'm a purchasing agent for a large company. We sell imports from many nations. 3 or 4 times a year, I have to go on distant trips to procure new merchandise. In fact, I have one coming up soon. No! The ladder on which Phoebe stood collapsed as she spoke, throwing her to the ground. Ken rushed into the yard and helped the unfortunate woman to her feet. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know, the woman responded. My ankle hurts a lot. Lean on me, Ken proposed. I'll help you get in the house. In the living room, Phoebe sat on a sofa. Thanks so much, she said to her benefactor. May I offer you a Coke or a beer? Seizing upon this opportunity to gain information, Ken replied, Sure, I'd love a Coke. They talked for about half an hour. Reluctant to address the matter of the note directly, the visitor tried by devious questions to elicit the response he desired. He learned a little bit more about his neighbors, but nothing about the mysterious message. The frustrated man left the Pierce residence shortly after his wife had arrived home from work. Looking out her window, Barbie was surprised to see her husband at the neighbor's. It seemed odd that he would be in that house. They scarcely knew the Pierces. Then she recalled that Ken had made reference to them just the previous night. When the man entered his own house, Barbie posed a question without revealing what she had observed. You didn't come in from the garage. Were you out in the neighborhood? Wanting to avoid discussion of the note, Ken said, I was just taking a short walk around the block. At work, I don't get enough exercise, you know. Barbie didn't challenge his comment. For months, relations between the two of them had not been good. She didn't wish to renew conflict over such a minor matter. Anyway, she knew a different way to clarify the issue. Through the window, Barbie could see Heidi Bigelow in the front yard of her home across the street. The neighbor had a reputation as a keen observer and a flagrant gossip. Barbie excused herself from her husband and walked across the street. Hello, Heidi. How are you? Just fine, thanks. Have you seen Ken this afternoon? He's a little late getting home. I certainly have, but are you sure you want me to tell you what I saw? Barbie gave a puzzled look before replying. Yes, what did you see? Well, less than an hour ago, I came out to work in the yard. A shocking scene greeted my eyes. Across the street stood Ken with his arm around Phoebe Pierce. The two of them seemed quite friendly. She was leaning on him when the two of them entered Phoebe's house. Your husband stayed in there 31 minutes. Was Mel in the house at the time? Oh no, he still hasn't come home. Now, Anne, you shouldn't make any hasty judgments about the incident just because Phoebe Pierce is a very attractive woman. Late the following afternoon, Ken Briscoe and Mel Pierce arrived home at the same hour. Both of the men went to their mailboxes as usual. Ken recognized this moment as a wonderful opportunity to question his neighbor. "Hi there, Mel." Hello, Ken. How was work?" "Oh, fine, fine. Say, I was wondering if you could help me a bit. Like Barbie and me, you and your wife are members of the Avondale Club. Can you tell me who the golf pro is?" "Yeah, it's a guy named Bo Zender. Around the club, everyone says he's a great athlete who also has a way with women. Don't let Phoebe take lessons from him." Ken frowned before confessing, "She's already taking lessons from him." "Well, in that case, keep an eye on the situation." "Thanks for the advice, but frankly, I don't know how I could do that. The lessons take place while I'm at work." "If you wish, I might be able to help you. Having talked to Zender once or twice before, I could start a conversation with him, turn the subject to women, and ask casually about which club members he finds appealing. I think he considers himself a Don Juan." "Okay, but be careful. Talk like that could start a fire in the club." The sun was setting as Mel entered his house. Pondering the future conversation with Bo Zender, he greeted his wife with an indifferent kiss. "You were talking to Ken Briscoe just now, weren't you?" asked Phoebe. Yes, replied Mel. "I didn't think you knew him," said the woman. "What did he have to say?" Mel's reply seemed evasive. "Oh, nothing much, just man's talk." 15 minutes later, Phoebe went outside to fetch the evening newspaper. Heidi Bigelow, who was standing in front of her house, crossed the street to talk. "Hello, Heidi." "Hello, Phoebe. My, your garden looks beautiful." "Heidi, you seem to know what's going on in the neighborhood. What can you tell me about the Briscoes?" "Well, between you and me, I believe they have a troubled marriage. There may be some infidelity going on, but I can't say for certain, and of course I wouldn't dream of spreading false rumors. Just ask your husband about the Briscoes. He's a very good friend of Ken." "Good friend? They scarcely know each other." "Oh, they know one another quite well. Just a moment ago they were talking together." Yeah, but if they're not good friends, how do you explain the secret note that Mel put in Ken's mailbox?" "Secret note?" "Yes, my boy Danny saw Mel do it about 2 days ago." Phoebe said nothing to Mel about the conversation with Heidi, but she wondered about the relationship of the two men. The next day was Saturday. As usual, the Pierces went to the Avondale Club and played tennis. Customarily, while Barbie had her lesson with Bo Zender, Ken played cards with other card members in a lounge. However, on this occasion, he deviated from the routine. In view of the mysterious note and the advice of Mel Pierce, Ken closely watched his wife's tennis lesson through a large view window. His blood began to boil when he saw the instructor wrap his arms around Barbie in order to demonstrate the proper stance and grip. At that instant, a portly, silver-haired man waddled up to the angry observer. It was Avondale Charter member Glenn Hunt, known for his brash manner and insensitive commentary. "Hello, young man. He's a handsome rogue, ain't he? They say he's got more women fighting over him than you can shake a stick at. Just look at that woman he's with now. You can tell she really likes him. See that smile on her face?" Ken didn't want to admit that that woman was his wife, so he remained silent. "Yes, sir," Glenn continued. "That man really has a way with women. He's quite a golfer, too. I hear he's going to play in a big international tournament in Cape Town, South Africa at the end of the month. As if to underscore the words of Glen Hunt, two passing women stopped before the large window. One of them pointed at Bo and said to the other, "He's a dream, isn't he?" Fuming internally and unwilling to hear more of his talk, Ken stormed off to the bar to have a stiff drink of whiskey. Meanwhile, the Pierces had finished their match. Mel went to the restroom while Phoebe sat in a lounge with some female friends. Emerging from the restroom, Mel saw Glen Hunt, one of his few acquaintances at the club. "Hello, Glen, what's new?" "Oh, nothing much. I just been standing here admiring that golf instructor. Boy, is he good with women. Look at that blonde who's with him now. You don't think they're just playing golf, do you?" Mel recognized Barbie Briscoe with Bo Zender. Glenn winked and continued talking. "You know that guy plays golf all round the world? They say he takes a different woman to every tournament. Wonder who's going with him at the end of the month when he plays in Cape Town, South Africa." Barbie's golf lesson finally concluded. She had derived little benefit from it, partly due to Bo's constant flirtation, which she found annoying. Even more distracting had been the persistent images of Ken and Phoebe that circulated through her mind. While walking to the clubhouse, she wondered if her husband had been with that woman during the lesson. She longed for an opportunity to speak to Mel Pierce. Perhaps he could shed some light upon the situation. Bo was still flirting unsuccessfully as he and his student entered the clubhouse. Spotting Mel Pierce in the crowd, Barbie told the instructor, "Excuse me, Bo, but I see a man I've been looking for." As she walked away, the golf pro said to himself, "What does she see in him?" In a lounge in another part of the clubhouse, Phoebe Pierce was conversing with friends Peggy Yarbrough, Mandy Bloomgarden, and Tiana Wheat. The subject was Phoebe's upcoming business trip. Mandy asked, "Where exactly are you going?" The reply was, "To London and to Cape Town." Surprised by this answer, Peggy interjected, "I was with you when you told Mel you were going to London, but you said nothing about Cape Town." Phoebe explained, "Mel's afraid for me to go to third world countries, and so I don't tell him everything. What he doesn't know won't hurt him." Looking around, she added, "Speaking of Mel, I wonder where he is. He said he was going to the restroom, but he's been gone a long time. Excuse me, girls, I need to find him." Phoebe stood up and walked in one direction. Her three companions went in the opposite direction. Continuing to discuss Phoebe, the trio failed to notice Mel passing by. The man heard only a few words uttered by Peggy. "So Phoebe's going to Cape Town without telling her husband." Mel stopped in his tracks. Could that be true? He asked himself. And suddenly he recalled Glen Hunt's question about Bo Zender. Wonder who's going with him when he plays in Cape Town. Filled with rage, Mel headed straight for the bar. There he encountered Ken Briscoe, who by this time had consumed several drinks. Mel sat beside him. "Ken, yesterday I told you that I'd talked to Bo Zender to find out which women he's after. Well, I've learned that he's after both of our wives. We've got to do something about him, and fast. He's planning a rendezvous with my wife in Cape Town just 5 days from now. But I've got an idea." At that moment, Phoebe Pierce, who had been looking all over the clubhouse for her husband, spotted him in the bar seated beside Ken Briscoe. Together again, she thought, what's going on? Then she saw Mel put an arm around his companion and whisper something in his ear before the two men erupted in laughter. On Monday afternoon, Heidi Bigelow, leader of the community's neighborhood watch program, was doing her duty. Sitting by the living room window of her home, binoculars in hand, she saw Ken Briscoe driving into his garage and then walk to the mailbox. To Heidi, his behavior was irregular. Ken seemed to be studying the street very carefully, as if to be sure that no one was looking. Taking an envelope from his pocket, he dashed to the Pierce residence and put it in their mailbox before dashing home again. Ever vigilant, Heidi maintained her post. 15 minutes later, Mel Pierce came home and went straight to the mailbox. Extracting the envelope that Ken had just placed there, he gave it a kiss. When Phoebe Pierce drove into her driveway, Heidi ran out to intercept her with a report of what had transpired. That evening, Phoebe spotted the letter to which Heidi had referred on a stand at Mel's side of the bed. She couldn't resist the urge to read it. The message was brief. Mel, I did what you suggested. Meet me tomorrow night at 8 at the corner of 7th and Lambert. Say nothing to Phoebe. One day we'll have to tell our wives. Phoebe Pierce spent a restless night trying to decipher this cryptic message in the light of her husband's recent contacts with Ken Briscoe. She assigned various interpretations to their words and actions and exhausted herself with a mental tennis match, pitting one interpretation against the other. By morning, she felt peace of mind. The facts all pointed to one obvious conclusion. Mel was gay, and Ken was his lover. She had heard of married men in such situations. Phoebe decided that it would be unfair of her to stand in Mel's way. She would let him live the life of his choice. In fact, if he feared to reveal his sexual orientation, she would help him come out of the closet. Phoebe remembered that Mandy once spoke of the Golden Peacock, a gay bar on Roxbury Drive. Later in the day, when Mel was not around, Phoebe placed a call to the establishment. About the time that Mel Pierce discovered the note from Ken Briscoe, Bo Zender arrived at his own apartment. A perfumed letter bearing his name was tacked to the front door. The message stirred the blood of the aspiring Don Juan. It said, Bo, during the golf lessons you've been giving me, I've been much too cold and distant. It has taken a while for me to realize just how much you mean to me. Please forgive my past behavior. I'll try hard to make things up to you. Meet me tomorrow night at 8:15 at the corner of 8th and Lambert. There's a special reason that I've chosen such a dark location. I think you'll like it. The letter was signed Barbie Briscoe. At 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Ken and Mel met at the corner of 7th and Lambert. The former asked his companion, You didn't have any trouble getting here, did you? Surprisingly little, replied Mel. In fact, when I told Phoebe that I was going out, she gave me a look as if to say, I understand. Ken smiled, and then he asked, Are you sure you know what to do? Sure, replied Mel. Let's put on our disguises and get going. We haven't much time. Donning false noses and mustaches, the pair walked half a block and waited for Bo Zender to appear at the corner of 8th and Lambert. When their target appeared, the two men sprinted in his direction. Ken shot Bo with a stun gun. As the victim lay flailing helplessly on the ground, his assailants tied his hands and feet with ropes and gagged his mouth before injecting him with a soporific. Then, grabbing the prisoner by his hands and feet, Mel and Ken carried him to the railroad tracks that ran parallel to Lambert. After glancing at various freight trains stationed there, Ken asked, Which one? Mel pointed and said, The second one over. Are you sure? Asked Ken. Absolutely, countered Mel. 3 minutes later, the men had reached their objective. Setting Bo on the ground, they opened the sliding door of the rail car beside them. After depositing the helpless man inside, the pair closed the door and walked away. Just before getting into their own vehicles, Ken asked, "When is the train supposed to leave?" "About 9, Mel replied. And when will he wake up?" Ken asked. "I can't say for sure. Based on the train's scheduled speed and the dosage he got, I calculate that he'll wake up about the time the train reaches Missouri. Any way you look at it, he'll never make the flight to Cape Town. That should send him a message." The two men removed their disguises, placed them in a paper sack, which they promptly burned. Then, congratulating one another for a job well done, they prepared to drive home. But Mel expressed one last thought. "Before leaving the house, I had to tell Phoebe that I was going out. Naturally, I said nothing about our plans, but I did mention your name. She said that I should invite you over for coffee when we returned home. What do you say? After all, an event like this calls for at least a mini celebration." Ken quickly agreed. Getting out of their cars at the Pierce residence, the two men could see that it was dark. Mel apologized. "I guess Phoebe forgot about the invitation," he said. "It doesn't matter. Come in anyway and have something to drink." As the front door opened, the house lights came on suddenly. At least a dozen smiling faces shouted, "Surprise!" A startled Mel asked, "What's this all about?" Phoebe stepped forward and took his hand. Grinning broadly, she said, "It's a coming out party for you and Ken. Let me introduce you to Wendell Moncrief, Ferenc Cadavi, and Evan Talamantes. Representing Richmond's gay community, they have volunteered to help you make the transition to a gay lifestyle." Ken and Mel looked at each other in amazement. "What are you talking about?" Phoebe asked her husband. "Come on now, Mel," she replied. "You don't have to pretend anymore. I know all about it. For some time you and Ken have been having a love affair. Don't worry, I understand." Flabbergasted, Barbie Briscoe said, "That's ridiculous, Phoebe. You told me you were having a surprise party for Mel and Ken, but you said nothing about this. Boy, do you have it all wrong. The truth is, Ken actually loves you." "What are you saying?" Ken asked his wife. "I love only you, but you're carrying on an affair with Bo Zender." Over Barbie's protests, Mel said to Phoebe, "Why are you fabricating this ludicrous story about Ken Briscoe and me? It must be to cover up the affair you're having with that golf pro." At this point, the conversation exploded into a raucous, multi-sided clash, replete with charges and countercharges that nearly elicited blows. Eventually, the acrimony gave way to joyful surprise when individuals learned that their spouses still love them. After order had been restored and smiles began to deck the faces of the guests, Phoebe brought out some refreshments. Ken proposed a bon voyage toast to Bo Zender. While the group applauded, Mel nearly choked on his drink. Now that merriment reigned, Ferenc Cadavi suggested that they play some games. He said, "I know a wonderful diversion. It's called the Barbie and Ken Game." End of story. Much of the comedy and tragedy of life comes from misunderstanding, just as you witnessed in the Barbie and Ken Game. My next story, on April 15th, also involves a misunderstanding, but of a more serious nature. But how can one not enjoy a narrative with the title April in Paris? Remember that I retain the copyright to all of my works. Thanks for watching Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery.